I should have known something was wrong when Victoria Sterling didn't cry at our engagement party. My name is Maya Hartley, and I'm a second-grade teacher from Cleveland, Ohio. Not exactly the pedigree the Sterling family had in mind for their golden boy, Dylan. But love doesn't care about tax brackets, right? At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I stood in the bridal suite of the Riverside Country Club, adjusting my veil for the 100th time. You look beautiful, honey. My mom squeezed my hand, her eyes glistening. She'd worked double shifts at the diner for months to help pay for my dress. It wasn't designer, nothing like the Vera Wang gown Victoria had suggested, but it was mine, and I felt like a princess. Thanks, Mom. I hugged her tight, breathing in her familiar scent of vanilla and coffee. I can't believe this is really happening. Dylan's a lucky man, she whispered. Don't let anyone tell you different. A sharp knock interrupted our moment. My maid of honor, Jasmine, poked her head in, her expression tight. Maya? The Sterlings are here. They want to see you before the ceremony. My stomach dropped. Now? But it's bad luck. I told them that. Jasmine's voice was flat. They insisted. I exchanged a glance with my mother, whose smile had vanished. We both knew this wasn't about tradition. Victoria Sterling swept into the room like she owned it, which, technically, she did. The country club had been in the Sterling family for 3 generations. She was impeccably dressed in champagne silk, her blonde hair styled in perfect waves. Behind her, Dylan's father, Richard, stood with his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Maya, dear. Victoria's voice dripped with false warmth. Don't you look quaint? I felt my mother stiffen beside me. Thank you, Mrs. Sterling. We won't take much of your time. Richard stepped forward, pulling an envelope from his jacket. We just wanted to give you this before the ceremony. A little wedding gift. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. Jasmine moved closer to me, protective. That's very kind of you, I said carefully, reaching for the envelope. Victoria's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my skin. Before you open that, sweetheart, I think we need to have a frank conversation. Woman to woman. Victoria, Richard warned, but she ignored him. My son is making a mistake. Her voice was ice. You're a sweet girl, Maya, truly. But you're not Sterling material. You don't come from our world. You'll never understand the pressures, the expectations, the legacy Dylan is meant to uphold. I yanked my hand back, my heart pounding. Dylan loves me. He chose me. Dylan is 28 and going through a phase. Victoria's laugh was cruel. Do you really think this will last? You, with your little teacher's salary and your Target jewelry? You're a novelty, dear. Nothing more. Get out. My mother's voice cut through the room like a knife. You don't talk to my daughter that way. Mrs. Hartley, please. Richard's tone was condescending. We're trying to be realistic. That envelope contains a check for $200,000. More money than Maya would see in 5 years of teaching. All she has to do is walk away. Today. Now. The room spun. $200,000. I could pay off Mom's medical bills, put my little brother through college, buy a house. But the cost? You want me to leave Dylan at the altar? My voice shook. On our wedding day? We want you to spare everyone the inevitable heartbreak, Victoria said softly, including yourself. You'll never be family, Maya. Not really. Take the money. Start fresh. Find someone from your own background. Jasmine grabbed my hand. Maya, you don't have to listen to this. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. $200,000 sat in that envelope, and all I could think about was my mother's face when the hospital bills came, the fear in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. I need to think, I whispered. There's nothing to think about, my mother said fiercely. Tell them to go to hell. Victoria smiled, triumphant. Take your time, dear. You have exactly 15 minutes before you're supposed to walk down that aisle. Choose wisely. They left, and the door clicked shut with a finality that made me want to scream. Maya. Jasmine gripped my shoulders. You're not actually considering this, are you? I looked at my mother, who was crying now, and I felt something inside me crack. Dylan doesn't know they were going to do this. He'd be horrified. Then marry him. Jasmine shook me gently. Marry him and prove them wrong. Show them you're not going anywhere. But what if they're right? The words tasted like poison. What if I'm not enough? What if I ruin his life? Stop it. My mother cupped my face in her hands. You are enough. You've always been enough. Don't let those people make you doubt yourself. I closed my eyes, Dylan's face swimming in my mind. His laugh. The way he looked at me like I hung the moon. The tiny apartment we'd found together. The life we'd planned. Could I really walk away from that? The envelope sat on the table, fat with promises and blood money. I'm getting married, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm marrying Dylan, and his parents can choke on their check. Jasmine hooped, hugging me tight. My mother smiled through her tears. But as we made our way to the ceremony, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just declared war. The chapel was breathtaking, all white roses and candlelight. I stood at the entrance, my father's arm linked through mine, watching Dylan at the altar. He looked nervous, handsome in his tuxedo, and when our eyes met, his face broke into the smile I loved. But as I started down the aisle, I heard it. She's not family. Victoria's voice, barely a whisper, but it carried. She'll never be one of us. Several guests turned, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to pitying. I stumbled slightly, my father catching me. Steady, sweetheart, he murmured. Don't give them the satisfaction. I lifted my chin and kept walking. Past the Sterling's friends in their designer clothes. Past the country club members who'd known Dylan since birth. Past Victoria's smug face and Richard's disapproving glare. When I reached Dylan, he took my hands, oblivious to what had just happened. You're beautiful, he breathed. I love you, I whispered back, willing it to be enough. The ceremony was perfect. Dylan's vows made me cry, and when he kissed me, the chapel erupted in applause. For a moment, I let myself believe everything would be okay. The reception was held in the club's grand ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Our first dance was magical, Dylan holding me close as Can't Help Falling in Love played. My wife, he murmured against my hair. I can't believe you're really my wife. Believe it, Sterling. I grinned up at him. You're stuck with me now. Best decision I ever made. But as the night wore on, the cracks began to show. Victoria made pointed comments about the simple centerpieces. Richard loudly discussed Dylan's career prospects with other guests, always mentioning how he hoped his son would settle down and get serious now. Every word was a tiny knife. Dylan noticed finally. Mom, Dad, can you please just... We're celebrating, darling. Victoria cut him off, her voice too bright. Now it's time for gifts. I believe we have something very special for the happy couple. A waiter appeared, carrying an ornate gift box wrapped in silver paper. It was ostentatious, clearly expensive, and every eye in the room turned to watch. Go ahead, Maya. Victoria's smile was poisonous. Open it. Let everyone see what the Sterling family gives to our new daughter-in-law. Dylan squeezed my hand, excited. They've been so secretive about this. My hands shook as I untied the ribbon. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the weight of Victoria's stare, in Richard's satisfied smirk. This wasn't a gift. This was a trap. I lifted the lid, and my entire world exploded. Inside the box was a prenuptial agreement. Not just any prenup, a thick, legal document with my signature forged at the bottom, dated 3 weeks before the wedding. And, beneath it, a stack of photographs. Photos of me that I'd never taken, never posed for, never even imagined. My hands shook so violently that Dylan had to steady the box. What is this? His voice was confused, not yet angry. Just a little insurance policy, son, Richard said smoothly, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. We wanted to make sure everyone understood the terms of this union. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The photographs showed me in compromising positions with a man I'd never met. They were expertly doctored, my face, someone else's body. Anyone who didn't look too closely would believe they were real. This is fake. The words came out strangled. All of this is fake. I never signed. There's your signature, clear as day. Victoria's voice rang out, sweet as poison. And those photographs, well, we hired a private investigator when Dylan first mentioned you. Imagine our surprise. You're lying. I screamed it, not caring any more about decorum or dignity. Dylan, you know me. You know I would never. But Dylan was staring at the photos, his face ashen. Maya, don't you dare. I grabbed his arm. Don't you dare doubt me. For even a second. This is doctored. This is fake. Your parents are trying to destroy us. Why would they do that? His voice was small, broken. Because they don't think I'm good enough for you. Tears streamed down my face. They offered me money this morning. $200,000 to walk away. When I refused, That's absurd, Richard interrupted, his voice booming. We did no such thing. Maya, if you're going to make wild accusations. I was there. My mother pushed through the crowd, Jasmine right behind her. I heard every word. They came to the bridal suite and tried to buy her off. A desperate woman, lying to protect her daughter. Victoria sighed dramatically. How predictable. The room erupted. Guests whispering, phones appearing, cameras flashing. I was drowning in the center of it all, watching my marriage disintegrate before it had even begun. Dylan's best man, Connor, grabbed the prenup, scanning it quickly. He was a lawyer, I remembered. One of Dylan's prep school friends. This is a legal document. The signature matches Maya's from the marriage license. Because they forged it. I was screaming now, desperate. Dylan, please. You know me. You love me. Don't let them do this. Dylan looked at me, and I saw it, the tiny seed of doubt. It was small, barely there, but it existed.
And it shattered me.
I need air. He pulled away from me, heading for the terrace. Dylan. I tried to follow, but Richard blocked my path. I think you've done enough damage for one night, Miss Hartley.
His voice was cold.
Perhaps it's time you left. This is my wedding. I shoved past him, but Victoria's friends closed ranks, a wall of designer gowns and judgment. Jasmine grabbed my hand. Come on, we're getting out of here. I can't leave Dylan. He asked for space. Give it to him. She was pulling me toward the exit, my mother on my other side. We'll figure this out, Maya. I promise. The cool night air hit me like a slap. The parking lot was half empty, fairy lights twinkling overhead in a mockery of romance. I collapsed against Jasmine's car, sobbing so hard I thought I might break. How did they do it?
My voice was raw.
How did they fake everything so perfectly? Money, my mother said bitterly. Money can buy anything, apparently. Even lies that look like truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Dylan. I need time to think. Please don't contact me tonight. I stared at those words until they blurred. My husband of 3 hours needed time to think about whether I was a liar and a cheater. The Sterlings had won.
No.
I stood up, wiping my eyes. No, they haven't won. Not yet. What are you going to do? Jasmine asked warily. I'm going to prove they're lying. I pulled out my phone, fingers flying over the keyboard. Connor said the signature matches mine from the marriage license. That means they had access to official documents. That means they committed fraud. Maya, these people have lawyers. They have money and power and I have the truth. I looked at my mother, at Jasmine, at the wreckage of my wedding day. That has to count for something, right? Before anyone could answer, a car pulled up. Not one of the country club's luxury vehicles, a beat-up Honda Civic that looked wildly out of place. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and salt and pepper hair. Maya Hartley, she called out. I approached cautiously. Who's asking? My name is Patricia Whitmore. I'm a lawyer, well, I used to be, before the Sterlings destroyed my career. She held out a business card, worn and faded. I've been waiting 20 years for a chance to take them down. And sweetheart, I think you might be exactly what I need. Patricia Whitmore's office was above a Chinese restaurant in downtown Cleveland, Nothing like the glass towers where Sterling lawyers worked. But her eyes were sharp, and when she looked at the forged prenup, she smiled. "This is sloppy work," she said, pulling out a magnifying glass. "Good enough to fool civilians, but any expert will spot the inconsistencies. The paper stock is wrong. This is premium grade, but the marriage license uses government standard." They rushed. "They rushed because I refused the bribe this morning," I said. "They had to cobble this together in hours." Arrogance. Patricia nodded. "The Sterlings always did think they were untouchable. Tell me everything, from the beginning."
So I did.
The engagement, the subtle hostility, Victoria's comments, the envelope full of money. Patricia took notes, her expression growing darker. "And the photographs?" she asked. "I've never seen that man in my life. I don't even know where those places are." Patricia pulled up a photo editing program on her ancient computer. "May I?" I nodded, and she scanned one of the photos. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, adjusting levels, examining pixels. After 10 minutes, she leaned back. "These are good fakes, but they're still fakes. See here?" She pointed to a spot on my neck. "The lighting is inconsistent. Your face is from one source, the body from another. A forensic photo analyst will tear these apart." Hope flickered in my chest. "So, we can prove it?" "We can prove it. But Maya..." Patricia's expression softened. "Proof isn't always enough. The Sterlings will drag this out. They'll make it expensive, exhausting. They'll try to bury you in legal fees and bad press. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Dylan on that terrace, doubt in his eyes. About Victoria's triumphant smile. About every person in that ballroom who'd watched my humiliation and done nothing. "I'm prepared," I said firmly. "What do I need to do?" Patricia grinned, and it was fierce. "First, we filed charges. Fraud, forgery, defamation. Then we demand a formal investigation. I have contacts, people who've been waiting for a chance to examine Sterling business practices. This might be the opening we need." "What do you mean?" 20 years ago, I represented a client against Sterling Industries. We had evidence of fraud, of illegal financial practices. But Richard Sterling made it disappear. The evidence, my client, my career. I've been collecting breadcrumbs ever since, waiting for the right moment. Patricia's eyes gleamed. "You're not just fighting for your marriage, Maya. You're fighting a war that's been brewing for 2 decades.
My phone buzzed again.
Another text from Dylan. My parents showed me more evidence. Bank statements, emails. "Maya, how could you?" My blood ran cold. They're still going. They're sending him more fake evidence. Then we move fast. Patricia was already typing. "I'm filing an emergency motion first thing tomorrow."
And Maya?
"I need you to trust me completely. This is going to get worse before it gets better." "Worse how?" "The Sterlings will retaliate. They'll come after your job, your family, your reputation. They'll dig up every mistake you've ever made and blast it across the media."
Can you handle that?
I thought about my students, their faces lighting up when I read them stories. My mother, working herself to the bone. Dylan, the man I loved, being poisoned against me by lies. "I can handle it," I whispered, "because I'm not the one who should be afraid." Patricia nodded slowly. "Good. Then let's make them pay." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a text from my principal. "Maya, we need to talk. Come to my office immediately." The school parking lot was swarming with reporters. Cameras flashed as I tried to push through. Microphones shoved in my face. "Ms. Hartley, is it true you married Dylan Sterling for his money? Did you really forge a prenuptial agreement? Have you been having an affair?" I kept my head down, heart pounding, until I reached the safety of the building. Principal Morrison was waiting in her office, her expression grave. "Maya, sit down." "Mrs. Morrison, whatever you've heard." "The school board received a call this morning." Her voice was gentle, pitying. "From Sterling Industries' legal team. They're threatening to pull all of their charitable donations unless we terminate your employment." The room tilted. "They can't do that. I haven't done anything wrong." "I believe you," Mrs. Morrison said quietly. "But Maya, Sterling Industries donates $500,000 a year to this district. That pays for textbooks, computers, after-school programs. The board is meeting this afternoon to discuss options. Options. The word tasted bitter. You mean firing me?
I'm so sorry.
I'm going to fight for you, but I need you to be realistic. The Sterlings have power, and they're using it. I stood up, my legs shaking. I won't make this easy for them. I'm filing charges today for fraud, forgery, and defamation. And when I prove they're lying, I expect the school to stand by me. Mrs. Morrison's eyes widened. Maya, taking on the Sterlings, is exactly what I'm going to do. I walked out, past the reporters, past the whispers, past the wreckage of my life. Patricia was waiting for me at the courthouse, a stack of documents in her arms. Ready to go to war? I thought about Dylan, who still hadn't called, about the students who needed me, about every person the Sterlings had crushed under their designer heels. Let's burn their world down, I said. And together, we walked inside. The courthouse steps became my new battlefield. Patricia filed our emergency motion on Monday morning, and by Monday afternoon, the Sterling legal machine roared to life. 3 of the city's most expensive law firms appeared on their behalf, drowning us in paperwork, counter-motions, and aggressive discovery demands. They're trying to bury us, Patricia said, reviewing the documents in her cramped office. Standard intimidation tactic. But look here, they made a mistake. She pointed to a motion filed by Sterling Industries' primary counsel. They're claiming the prenup was prepared by their family lawyer, Gerald Finch. But Finch retired 6 months ago and moved to Florida. Wanna bet he knows nothing about this document? I grabbed my phone. We need to talk to him. Already on it. Patricia grinned. I have a paralegal tracking him down as we speak. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Maya. Dylan's voice sent a knife through my heart. We need to talk. In person. Where? Our apartment. In an hour. Please come alone. I looked at Patricia, who frowned. That could be a trap. Or it could be my husband finally ready to listen, I said quietly. I have to try. The apartment we'd rented together sat on the east side, a modest 2-bedroom with terrible water pressure and neighbors who played music too loud. I'd loved every inch of it. Our home. Dylan was waiting on the couch, and he looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My heart ached despite everything. You came, he said softly. You asked me to. I stayed by the door, keeping my distance. Have you been here all night? I couldn't go back to my parents' house. Couldn't face them. He looked up at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen at the wedding, doubt. Not about me.
About them.
Maya, I need you to tell me the truth. All of it.
So I did.
Every detail, from Victoria's arrival in the bridal suite to the forged prenup to Patricia's investigation. Dylan listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When I finished, silence stretched between us like a chasm. The morning of our wedding, Dylan finally said, my mother told me she was giving us a generous gift. She said it was a trust fund, already set up in both our names. She showed me paperwork, had me sign documents. I didn't read them carefully, because I trusted her. His voice cracked. I think I helped them forge that prenup without knowing it. Rage flooded through me. She used you. I'm so sorry. He stood, moving toward me. Maya, I should have believed you immediately. I should have known my parents were capable of this. But seeing those photos, that signature, for a moment I doubted. And I hate myself for it. They're very good at what they do, I said bitterly. They've had years of practice destroying people. What do you mean? I told him about Patricia, about the case 20 years ago, about the pattern of Sterling destruction. Dylan's face grew paler with each word. I knew my parents were ruthless in business, he whispered. But I never thought. Maya, I need to make this right. Tell me how to help. You can start by testifying about what your mother made you sign.
Done.
What else? I need access to your parents' house. There has to be evidence there, receipts for the photographer who faked those pictures, communications about the forgery, something. Dylan pulled out his keys. I still have my old key to their home office. They're in New York until Thursday for a business conference. We could go tomorrow night. That's breaking and entering. It's my childhood home. His smile was grim. And technically, I'm retrieving my own property. My high school yearbooks are still in that office. Despite everything, I almost laughed. You're willing to betray your parents for me? I'm willing to stand up for what's right. Dylan finally closed the distance between us, taking my hands. Maya, I love you. I should have shouted that from the rooftops at our wedding instead of letting my parents' poison touch us. I'm not making that mistake again. I wanted to collapse into his arms, to let everything be okay. But I couldn't.
Not yet. Words are easy, Dylan.
Actions are harder. Can you really choose me over them? Over your inheritance, your trust fund, your place in their world? I choose you, he said firmly. Over everything. Always. A knock at the door made us both jump. I opened it to find Jasmine, holding grocery bags and looking fierce. I brought reinforcements, she announced, pushing past me into the apartment. By which I mean comfort food and wine. Also, you should know, I may have done something slightly illegal. Jasmine, I warned. Remember how I work in IT at the hospital? She set down the bags, pulling out her laptop. And remember how Victoria Sterling is on the hospital board? Well, I may have accessed her email account. Purely accidentally, of course. That is definitely illegal, Dylan said. Good thing I'm excellent at my job and terrible at following rules. Jasmine grinned, opening her computer. You'll want to see this. The email chain appeared on screen, dated 2 weeks before my wedding. Victoria to Richard. The girl is more stubborn than expected. We need a stronger approach. Contact Mitchell about the photographs. Richard's response. Already done. He's the best in the business. No one will be able to prove they're fake without spending a fortune on forensic analysis. Victoria again. And the prenup? Richard. Gerald's signature stamp is in the office safe. I'll have the documents prepared. Dylan signs whatever I put in front of him. He won't read the fine print. They documented everything. I breathed. They were so confident they'd get away with it. They kept records. Mitchell. Dylan pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Mitchell Crane. He's a photographer who works with my father's company. Does corporate headshots, event photography. I've met him a dozen times. Patricia was going to love this. Tuesday night, Dylan and I stood outside the Sterling mansion in the wealthy suburb of Shaker Heights. The house was dark, imposing, a monument to old money and older secrets. Last chance to back out, I said. Dylan squeezed my hand. Let's find the truth. His key worked, the alarm code hadn't been changed. We slipped inside like thieves, which I suppose we were. The house smelled of expensive furniture polish and Victoria's perfume. Office is upstairs, Dylan whispered, leading me through hallways lined with family portraits. Every Sterling going back generations stared down at us with judgment. The office was exactly what I expected. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls of law books. Dylan went straight to a painting of his grandfather, swinging it open to reveal a safe. You know the combination? It's my mother's birthday. She's not as clever as she thinks. His fingers spun the dial, and the safe clicked open. Inside was a treasure trove. Documents from the Mitchell Crane Photography Studio, including an invoice for specialized photo composition services, rush job, $50,000. Gerald Finch's signature stamp. Copies of the forged prenup with handwritten notes in Richard's distinctive scrawl. And beneath it all, a file labeled Maya Hartley, Background Investigation. My hands shook as I opened it. They had investigated everything: my grades, my employment history, my family's finances. There were photos of my mother at work, my little brother at school, lists of my friends, my habits, places I frequented. They stalked me, I whispered. For months before you proposed, they were building a file. Dylan's face was ashen. There are other files. Look. He pulled out folder after folder. Names I didn't recognize, but each containing the same kind of investigation. Background checks, financial records, photographs. Patricia Whitmore. I held up a thick file. They've been tracking her for 20 years, following her clients, monitoring her cases. Dylan, your parents are criminals. His voice was hollow. They're criminals and I never saw it. You loved them. You trusted them. That's not a crime. But what they've done. He sank into his father's chair, overwhelmed. How many people have they destroyed? How many lives ruined? My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Gerald Finch confirmed he never prepared any prenup for Dylan Sterling. He's willing to testify. We have them. I showed Dylan the message. We need to photograph everything. Every document, every file. And then we need to get out of here before they come home early. We worked quickly, using our phones to document everything. The sun was rising by the time we finished, both of us exhausted and overwhelmed by what we'd found. As we locked up and headed to the car, Dylan paused. Maya, when this goes public, and it will go public, my family's name will be destroyed. The company, the foundation, everything. I'll lose my trust fund, my inheritance. We'll have nothing. We'll have each other, I said. And the truth. Isn't that enough? He kissed me, soft and desperate. It's everything. Wednesday morning, Patricia filed an amended complaint with exhibits. Mitchell Crane's invoice. Richard's handwritten notes. The signature stamp. Gerald Finch's testimony. And most damning of all, the files on Patricia and a dozen other people the Sterlings had systematically destroyed. By noon, the story had exploded across every news outlet. Sterling Industries in fraud scandal. Prominent family accused of forgery and harassment. Teacher's wedding nightmare exposes decades of corporate corruption. Sterling prenup scandal. How far will the wealthy go to protect their legacy? My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, lawyers, people I hadn't spoken to in years. The school board called an emergency meeting and reinstated me with a formal apology. Sterling Industries stock plummeted. And at 3 p.m., Victoria and Richard Sterling were arrested. I watched it happen on the news, police leading them out of their New York hotel in handcuffs. Victoria's perfect composure finally cracked, her face twisted with rage. Richard looked smaller somehow, diminished. Dylan watched beside me, silent tears streaming down his face. I held his hand, and we mourned together. Not for them, but for the illusion of family he'd lost. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now we rebuild, I said. Together. But even as I spoke, I knew the worst was yet to come. The Sterlings had one more card to play, and they were desperate enough to use it.
My phone rang.
An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Maya Hartley? A smooth male voice, professional and cold. My name is Lawrence Whitfield, attorney for Victoria and Richard Sterling. My clients would like to extend an offer of settlement. $5 million, all charges dropped, and a confidentiality agreement that ensures this matter never goes to trial. I'm not interested. I think you should be. You see, we've done some investigating of our own. Your mother's medical bills, your brother's scholarship application, your own student loans. $5 million would solve a lot of problems. My answer is no. Think carefully, Miss Hartley. If this goes to trial, we will make your life hell. Every mistake you've ever made, every embarrassing moment, every secret you've tried to hide, it will all become public record. Is your pride really worth that? I looked at Dylan, at the evidence spread across our coffee table, at the news coverage showing Victoria's mugshot. See you in court, Mr. Whitfield. I hung up and Dylan pulled me close. They're scared. They should be. I smiled grimly. Because we're just getting started. The trial began on a cold Monday in November, 6 weeks after my disastrous wedding. The courthouse was packed. Reporters, curious onlookers, and representatives from every family the Sterlings had destroyed over the years. Patricia sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, calm and prepared. Across the aisle, Lawrence Whitfield commanded an army of attorneys in $1,000 suits. Victoria and Richard Sterling sat behind them, dressed impeccably, their faces masks of wounded dignity. They'd spent the past weeks launching a media campaign portraying themselves as victims of a gold-digging teacher who'd manipulated their innocent son. It had worked on some people. But not enough. Judge Maria Castellanos entered, and the room fell silent. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a reputation for fairness and zero tolerance for wealthy defendants who thought they were above the law. "This court is now in session," she announced. "Ms. Whitmore, you may present your opening statement." Patricia stood, and I saw the woman she must have been 20 years ago. Fierce, brilliant, unstoppable. "Your Honor, this case is about power. The power of wealth to silence truth, to destroy lives, to pervert justice itself." The defendants, Victoria and Richard Sterling, attempted to end Maya Hartley's marriage through an elaborate scheme of fraud, forgery, and defamation. But their crime didn't begin with Maya. For over 2 decades, the Sterlings have used their wealth and influence to crush anyone who threatened their image of perfection. Today, that ends. She clicked a remote, and the screens lit up with Mitchell Crane's invoice. The evidence will show a deliberate, premeditated conspiracy. Fabricated photographs purchased for $50,000. A prenuptial agreement forged using stolen signature stamps. A targeted harassment campaign designed to humiliate the plaintiff in the most public way possible, at her own wedding. Patricia paused, letting the weight of her words settle. But perhaps most damning of all, we will present evidence of a pattern. Files on dozens of individuals the Sterlings deemed threats. Investigations, surveillance, systematic destruction of reputations and careers. The defendants didn't just attack Maya Hartley. They attacked anyone who dared to be not Sterling material. She turned to face Victoria and Richard directly. These defendants believe their money places them above consequence. This trial will prove them wrong. When Patricia sat down, I squeezed her hand. Across the aisle, Whitfield rose with practiced ease. "Your Honor, my clients are victims of a malicious prosecution fueled by greed and vindictiveness. Maya Hartley entered the Sterling family with clear intent to extract as much wealth as possible. When presented with a standard prenuptial agreement, she refused to sign. When offered a generous settlement to avoid an incompatible marriage, she saw an opportunity for a bigger payday." He gestured dismissively at our evidence. "The prosecution will show you invoices and documents, but they cannot prove criminal intent. Mitchell Crane is a photographer who does extensive editing work. That's his job. The prenuptial agreement contains Ms. Hartley's genuine signature, obtained legally. And the so-called investigation files are simply due diligence any responsible parent would conduct before their child marries a stranger." Whitfield's voice grew softer, more sympathetic. "Victoria and Richard Sterling are loving parents who wanted to protect their son. Perhaps they were overzealous. Perhaps they made mistakes. But mistakes are not crimes, and this court should not be used as a weapon against people whose only fault was caring too much." It was a good performance. I could see some jurors nodding slightly. But then Patricia called her first witness. The prosecution calls Dylan Sterling to the stand. The courtroom erupted in whispers as Dylan walked to the witness stand. He hadn't spoken to his parents since the night we broke into their office. They'd tried to contact him dozens of times, but he'd blocked their numbers, refused their lawyers' overtures. Now, as he was sworn in, Victoria leaned forward in her seat, her face a mixture of hope and desperation. "Mr. Sterling," Patricia began gently, "can you describe your relationship with your parents prior to your wedding?" "Close," Dylan said quietly. "I trusted them completely. They were my parents. I never questioned their judgment or motives." "And on the morning of your wedding, did your mother ask you to sign any documents?"
Yes.
"She told me it was trust fund paperwork, standard financial documents related to my marriage. I signed without reading them carefully." Patricia displayed the forged prenup on screen. "Is this your signature on page 12? Dylan studied it.
Yes.
"But I never saw this document. The papers my mother showed me were labeled as trust fund transfers." "So, you unknowingly provided your signature for a prenuptial agreement you never agreed to?" "Objection." Whitfield shot to his feet, leading the witness. "Sustained," Judge Castellanos said. "Rephrase, Ms. Whitmore." "Mr. Sterling, what were you told you were signing?" "Trust fund paperwork. My mother said it was routine, that all the Sterling heirs signed similar documents upon marriage. I trusted her. Patricia nodded. Let's talk about the wedding reception. When the gift box was opened and you saw the prenup and photographs, what was your reaction? Dylan's voice cracked. Confusion. Shock. The signature looked real, and the photos were convincing. For a terrible moment, I doubted Maya. I doubted everything. When did you realize the truth? When Maya told me about the bribe my parents offered her that morning. When she explained how they'd pressured her to walk away. I started to see the pattern, all the comments over the years about people not being suitable, about protecting the family legacy at any cost. I realized my parents were capable of this. And what did you do? I helped Maya investigate. We went to my parents' house and found the files, evidence of forgery, the photographer's invoice, documentation of surveillance on Maya and others. I saw what my parents really were. Victoria made a strangled sound. Richard grabbed her arm, whispering urgently. One final question, Mr. Sterling, Patricia said. Knowing that your testimony here today will likely result in your disinheritance, the destruction of your family's reputation, and possible criminal consequences for your parents, do you stand by your decision to testify? Dylan looked directly at his mother. I do. Because Maya was right. The truth matters more than money, more than legacy, more than protecting people who use their power to hurt others. No further questions. Whitfield approached for cross-examination, his expression calculating. Mr. Sterling, isn't it true that you and Ms. Hartley have significant financial problems? Student loans, medical bills, credit card debt. We have normal debt for people our age, yes. And isn't it true that testifying against your parents guarantees you'll be written out of their will, making this lawsuit your only chance at Sterling money? Objection. Patricia stood. Counsel is implying financial motive without foundation. I'll allow it, Judge Castellanos said. The witness may answer. Dylan's jaw tightened. I'm testifying because what my parents did was wrong. If I wanted their money, I'd be sitting next to them right now helping cover this up. But you married Maya knowing she came from a poor background. I married Maya because I love her, Dylan interrupted, his voice rising. Her background has nothing to do with her worth as a person. The fact that you think it does shows exactly why my parents' worldview is toxic. Several jurors nodded. Whitfield quickly moved on, but the damage was done. Over the next 3 days, Patricia systematically dismantled the Sterling defense. Mitchell Crane took the stand and admitted under oath that he'd been paid $50,000 to create composite images, using photos of Maya from social media and stock photography of an unknown woman. He'd thought it was for a prank gift, but the contract had been suspiciously specific about making the images indistinguishable from authentic photographs. Gerald Finch testified via video link from Florida, confirming he'd never prepared any prenuptial agreement for Dylan Sterling and that his signature stamp had been stolen from his office months before his retirement. The forensic document examiner showed how the prenup's paper stock, ink composition, and printing method were inconsistent with legitimate legal documents prepared by Finch's firm. And then Patricia played her trump card, the surveillance files. One by one, witnesses took the stand, people the Sterlings had investigated, harassed, or destroyed. A former business partner who'd been forced out through fabricated embezzlement charges. A journalist who'd been blacklisted after writing a critical article. A nonprofit director whose funding disappeared after she rejected Richard Sterling's sexual advances. The pattern was undeniable. The Sterlings didn't just attack me. They attacked anyone who threatened their carefully constructed image. On day 4, Patricia called Victoria Sterling to the stand. Victoria looked immaculate in a navy Chanel suit, her blonde hair perfect, her expression serene. She radiated wounded dignity as she took the oath. Mrs. Sterling, Patricia began, did you offer Maya Hartley money to leave your son at the altar? Absolutely not. That's a fabrication. So Maya Hartley is lying? I'm afraid so. She's a troubled young woman who became obsessed with my son's wealth. When we tried to protect Dylan with a reasonable prenuptial agreement, she lashed out with these absurd accusations. Patricia nodded slowly. You say the prenup was reasonable. Did Dylan know about it before the wedding? Of course. We discussed it as a family. That's interesting. Patricia pulled out a document. Because Dylan testified under oath that he never saw the prenup until the reception. Are you calling your son a liar? Victoria's composure slipped slightly. Dylan was confused. The stress of the wedding. Mrs. Sterling, did you hire Mitchell Crane to create fabricated photographs of Maya Hartley?
No.
Then how do you explain this invoice? Patricia displayed it on screen. Paid from your personal checking account. $50,000 for specialized photo composition services. That was for holiday cards. Mitchell does extensive editing. Your holiday cards cost $50,000? Patricia's voice dripped with skepticism. Mrs. Sterling, let's talk about the morning of the wedding. Where were you at 9:15 a.m.? I don't recall exactly. You were in the bridal suite, weren't you? With your husband and Maya Hartley? I may have stopped by to wish her well. You stopped by with a check for $200,000 and told her to walk away because she was not Sterling material. Isn't that correct? That's absurd. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence this recording. Patricia clicked her remote, and my voice filled the courtroom. It was from that morning in the bridal suite. I'd been recording on my phone. Not planning to, but Jasmine had activated the voice memo app while pretending to check a text message. We'd forgotten about it in the chaos that followed. Victoria's voice came through crystal clear. You're not Sterling material, dear. Take the money. Start fresh. Find someone from your own background. The jury leaned forward, listening to every damning word. Victoria's face went white. That recording is inadmissible, Whitfield shouted. It was obtained without consent. Ohio is a one-party consent state, Patricia said calmly. Ms. Hartley was present and aware of the recording. It's perfectly legal. Judge Castellanos reviewed the documentation. I'll allow it. Continue, Ms. Whitmore. Patricia turned back to Victoria, whose mask had finally cracked. Mrs. Sterling, you've been systematically destroying anyone you deemed unworthy of your family for decades. Maya Hartley was just the latest victim. How many lives have you ruined? Objection. Whitfield was on his feet. Argumentative. Withdrawn. Patricia smiled coldly. No further questions. The defense presented their case over 2 days, but it was weak. They called character witnesses who spoke glowingly of the Sterlings' charitable work, but Patricia shredded them on cross-examination. They brought in their own document expert, who admitted under questioning that the prenup had irregularities. Richard Sterling never took the stand. His lawyers knew he'd be destroyed. On the final day, both sides gave closing arguments. Whitfield made an impassioned plea about reasonable doubt and the dangers of criminalizing parental concern. But Patricia's closing was devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense wants you to believe this is about a family trying to protect their son. But the evidence shows something far darker. This is about power, the power to manipulate, to control, to destroy. The Sterlings spent $50,000 on fake photographs. They forged legal documents using stolen signature stamps. They offered a bribe and, when it was refused, attempted to humiliate Maya Hartley in front of 200 witnesses. She paused, looking at each juror. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated Maya. They assumed a second-grade teacher from Cleveland couldn't possibly stand up to their money and lawyers. They were wrong. Patricia gestured to the evidence displayed around the courtroom. The paper trail is clear. The testimony is overwhelming. The defendants are guilty of fraud, forgery, and criminal harassment. But beyond the legal charges, they're guilty of something worse, believing that their wealth made them better than everyone else, that it made them untouchable. Her voice rose. Send a message today. Tell the Sterlings and everyone like them that in this country, money doesn't buy immunity. Justice isn't for sale. And when you hurt people because you think they're beneath you, there are consequences. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the four women stood with the verdict slip. Judge Castellanos read it aloud. On the charge of fraud, guilty. Victoria gasped. Richard's face remained stone. On the charge of forgery, guilty. On the charge of criminal harassment. Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Dylan grabbed my hand, tears streaming down his face. Patricia closed her eyes, finally vindicated after 20 years. Judge Castellanos banged her gavel. Order. Sentencing will be held in 30 days. Defendants are remanded into custody pending sentencing. Bail is revoked. As the bailiffs led Victoria and Richard away in handcuffs, Victoria turned to look at Dylan one last time. Her expression was pure hatred. "You'll regret this," she mouthed. Dylan looked away. 6 months later, I stood at the front of a different venue, not a country club, but a community center in our neighborhood. The decorations were simple. Wildflowers in mason jars, string lights, folding chairs borrowed from the school. Ready. Jasmine adjusted my dress, not designer, just a simple white sundress I'd found on sale. Ready, I said. This time when I walked down the aisle, there were no whispers. Just my students cheering, my family crying happy tears, and Dylan waiting for me with a smile that could light up the world. Take 2, he whispered as I reached him. 3rd time's the charm, I corrected, grinning. We said our vows again, but these meant more. We'd earned them through fire and struggle. We'd chosen each other when it cost everything. At the reception, Patricia stood to give a toast. I've practiced law for 40 years, and I've seen a lot of injustice. But I've also seen courage, and Maya Hartley is the most courageous person I know. She stood up to people who thought they could buy anything, even the truth. And she won. The room erupted in applause. My mother was crying again. My principal had come, along with half the school district. Mitchell Crane had sent an apology letter and a donation to my classroom. Gerald Finch sent flowers from Florida. As Dylan and I danced, I felt truly free for the first time since the nightmare began. I have something for you, Dylan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. I know we already did rings, but this is different. Inside was a key. It's to Patricia's old law office, he explained. She's retiring for real this time, and she wants you to have the space. She thinks you should start a nonprofit, helping people fight back against abusers like my parents. I looked across the room at Patricia, who raised her glass with a knowing smile. The Sterling Justice Foundation? I suggested. Dylan laughed. How about the Hartley Hope Project? Your name deserves to be on something good. Our name, I corrected. Dylan Hartley has a nice ring to it. He'd legally changed his name last month, cutting the final tie to his parents. They were serving 3 years in minimum security prison, and Sterling Industries was being dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay restitution to their victims. We'd received a settlement of $2 million, not from the Sterling's personal wealth, which had been seized, but from the company's victim compensation fund. After taxes and legal fees, we'd paid off our debts, bought a modest house, and put the rest into savings for the nonprofit. More importantly, 17 other victims had come forward with the evidence we'd helped uncover. The Sterling's pattern of destruction was finally ended. Can I tell you something? Dylan said softly as we swayed to the music. That morning, when my mother offered you the money, I'm glad you said no. Not because of what it led to, but because it showed me who you really are. Someone who can't be bought. Someone with integrity. I said no because I loved you. I corrected. And because $200,000 doesn't fix what's broken inside people like your parents. They'd have just found someone else to hurt. Instead, you stopped them. He kissed my forehead. My hero. Our hero. Jasmine called out, clearly eavesdropping. This is a group effort. The party lasted until midnight. My students performed a song they'd written about standing up to bullies. My mother danced with my father for the first time in years. Patricia got tipsy on champagne and told stories about taking down corrupt executives in the 80s. And when Dylan and I finally left, heading to the same modest apartment we'd rented before everything went wrong, I felt like the richest person in the world. 1 year later, the Hartley Hope Project occupied Patricia's old office, though we'd renovated. Bright paint, new computers, comfortable chairs for clients who'd been beaten down by the system. I still taught 2nd grade 3 days a week. I'd never give that up. But the other 2 days, I ran the nonprofit with Patricia's guidance. We'd helped 12 families fight back against wealthy abusers. We'd won 9 cases. Dylan worked as a financial advisor for a small firm, helping people like my parents plan for retirement. He made a fraction of what he would have at Sterling Industries, and he'd never been happier. On our first anniversary, we took a trip to Cleveland's lakefront. No fancy resort, just a picnic blanket and sandwiches from the deli. Do you ever regret it? I asked, watching the sunset. Everything you lost? I didn't lose anything that mattered, Dylan said. I gained everything. A real marriage, honest work, self-respect. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. It was a photo. Victoria Sterling, released early from prison for good behavior, standing outside the courthouse. The message read, "This isn't over." I showed Dylan and we both stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it. "Let her try," I said. "We're not scared anymore." Dylan pulled me close. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Together, I agreed. And as the sun set over Lake Erie, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I realized something important. The Sterlings had tried to destroy me because they thought I wasn't good enough for their world. They were right. I was too good for it.